Welcome to Smalltalk Daily for Friday, December 18th, 2009. This morning I'd like to go through some basics of exception handling. And to give you an example, I'm going to go to a website that no longer exists, the old UIUC wiki for VisualWorks, and I'm going to try to fetch the contents. Now, in trying to fetch the contents, this is going to time out on me, or it's going to give me a peer fault signal. It's not entirely clear which one will happen. In this case, I get a peer communications error. And if I go into debug here, I will find out which actual error happened, and it'll tell me down here that it's raising this error signal. Now, it's not entirely clear from this context here which particular error signal is happening, but I can do this and inspect this and find out which one is actually happening. So I can inspect the result of that, and it tells me that this is a peer fault signal, so that'll tell me what it is, and it's an OS error holder peer fault signal. This is kind of a throwback to the old way of doing signal handling instead of exception handling, but it's the same thing. It's still class-based exceptions. So what I can do is I can close this down, and I'll scroll down and show you the right way to do this. Put the message that may cause an exception into a block, and then take all of the exceptions that may come up. In this case, you may get a retry signal, you may get a peer fault signal, and then inside that you get an on, that's the exception, do, the exception that happens will be passed in, and you can do whatever you want in this block. I'm just going to drop a message out to the transcript saying timed out. You see I tested this a few minutes ago. And then I'm going to do a return. If you want to know what return does, you go into generic exception, you find there's some protocol. Return will just return nil as the value of the block, meaning if a bad thing happened, you'll get back nil, which is probably okay. If it's a resumable error, for instance, it might be that you got a certificate down that is not trusted yet when you did a query to a website, and you may want to resume that after caching the certificate. You may have a number of things that you want to raise another exception for. You may just want to say, try it again. So you can try retry or retry using a different value. There are a number of things you can do. In this case, I'm just going to do the default. So if I take this and highlight it, you'll see that what I get back is a nil because I seamlessly handled the exception and then said, fine, it didn't work. I don't even really care why it didn't work. Maybe I have a larger network application that's just querying a bunch of websites. And if I don't get something back, I get nil. And I just say, fine, let's ignore that for now and just say, don't worry about it. Give you another example of a small kind of error you might get. This is unlikely to happen directly, but let's say you tried to end up doing something where you divided by 0. Inspecting that, of course, is not going to work because you can't divide by 0. But what you can do is you can even handle exceptions like this. Let's say that this were some user interface application where somebody could type in a 0 and you don't want that result to result in an exception being thrown at the user. So you can do something like this, on 0 divide, and then do ex. I can do something like ex return colon and say, well, let's just return 0 in that case. So let's try that and do an inspect, and you get back 0. Probably not the entirely correct response. What you'd probably want to do in a UI application in this case is throw a dialog box up at the user saying can't do that, or flash the UI or something. But you notice that you have the capability of returning a different value. So if you have input that doesn't make sense, you could always just throw the default value in your return colon method. So in all cases with exceptions, you can handle them and then do something more intelligent. In many cases, the intelligent thing to do, as I often do in bottom feeder, is just ignore the problem and move along, because if it's a network application, there's any number of reasons you might get back a bad answer from a website. And in most cases, if you know the website's okay, it's fine just to ignore it for now and figure the next time I check it'll probably be okay. But the point is to take a look at what you can do, go browse generic exception, look at the protocols under actions, and you'll find all the things you can do. You can pass the exception off as something else, you can just exit, you can retry it, you can return an arbitrary value, you can just resume. So there are any number of things you can do, and you can just go ahead and explore the protocol and see for yourself. So that's about it for today. Until next time, have fun with Smalltalk.